Welcome to week 9 already. I cannot believe we're already on week 9 um, of branding ourselves and our own businesses. And I'm going to try something new today. I don't know if it's really new, but it's a little different, where it's going to involve all of you guys to participate and work through ideas, because I think using the collective genius of all of you will help each one of us. So what I want to do, and when I say branding ourselves, I mean literally how are we branding our own company? And then if we are a solopreneur, are we using more of the personal branding element in there, similar to Bonnie? Just in really, how are we communicating who we are, what we do, what problems are we solving, and are we actually connecting with that person that we want to be connecting with? That's through the visuals that we put out. That's through our messaging. That's through the services that we provide and the problems that we solve. So that's kind of how I'm thinking of our branding. But I want to ask you guys first, I would love us to brainstorm a list of things that would make up a brand. So let's just say that you're talking to a client. How would you describe what a brand is? Because I think if we look at it from the outside, we'll also get perspective of our own brands and how we represent ourselves. So open forum, just blurt out anything that you feel makes up a brand. And it would be tangible, like messaging, or so that we can work our way in, or reverse engineer, however that is. Anyone?
The name.
Visual
identity.
I'm gonna make notes while you talk.
I don't want to say too much. Let other people speak too.
2 down.
I think it's how others, how the client feels about you as a whole.
How others feel about you?
Yeah.
We'll put feeling on that. Is there something, and how would someone get to the point of actually feeling anything? So if we were to back up even another step, what elicits emotion?
Can you say that in other words?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to, and if you guys have a better way of saying it, but what would make someone feel something? So is it sound? Is it like what brings up an emotion for people? Visuals. Okay.
Any way you connect with your audience. So like advertising, but also like customer service, packaging.
Yeah. Those are perfect. Yeah. So the touch points, right? Yeah. Something, Daniel, when you said about the feeling, now I'm thinking stories. Stories elicit an emotion. So not just the formulas, not just how-tos, but an actual story, I would think, is one way of eliciting, pulling out an emotion from someone. What other things might make up a brand? Personality. And how, if we were to get personality, what makes up a personality?
Voice
and tone. What else you can get specific? Vibe. How so? Like how would you communicate a vibe?
That's a good question.
Like if it's warm, approachable, or if they're a little cold or conservative. It's kind of hard to put that in words.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about it.
Because I'm thinking of how do we even know, even if you just make it a person, if a person's warm and approachable, how do you know that?
Their actions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like what?
So,
what kind of actions?
Well, I mean, the brand extends from everything from the minute somebody shakes hands with an employee of the company or representation of it to them seeing a billboard on the highway. The key is to just elicit the same emotional response each time. And it's kind of where we come into play, because we help people put the blinders on and focus on that one core emotion. So it could be, and in Anila Wheeler's book, Designing Brand Identity, she touches on things like sonic branding, and this would be things like at the end of an AT&T commercial, you hear those the bum, 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 or when you open Netflix and it's like, and it like blows your face off. Those are all elements that would contribute to them eliciting that emotional response. So the list is going to go on and on and on and on. And it would honestly just depend on, is the consumer interacting with it? If so, it needs to elicit that emotional response.
Right. So, and that could be, it's really through our five senses then.
Oh yeah.
Right. So anything that, I'm going to put five senses. So anything that our five senses would interact with or that they would touch. So yeah. So exactly. So it could be through sound. That could be through visuals. It could be through touch or smell.
Yeah,
that works. It definitely is all a part of it. So the five senses, I would say, that's a big one.
Yeah. Or even like the environment, walking
environment.
Walking into Tiffany's is way different than walking into Target.
Right. And this is touching upon, if you remember all of our conversations previously, especially with Bonnie, where she was pinning places that she would take her clients for meetings, that, Zach, is exactly what we're talking about too. That environment, like what type of environment would you want to bring your client to into a meeting, the clothing that you wear, all of that. So now we're just trying to take everything that we were talking about and put it into a package. What other things potentially would make up a brand, if anything? I mean, we hit on a lot. I don't know if.
I think it's also behavior and your beliefs. What you believe in behind.
Yes.
So what you buy, what you eat, all this kind of stuff.
Yes, that was great. Beliefs. Yeah, beliefs, values, mission, I guess we could say. What's your mission? Definitely beliefs, because we want to attract people who believe the same thing we do. Just like if you were going back to the environment example, if you were to bring someone, not that it's bad, but if you were to bring someone to Starbucks versus one of those third wave boutique coffee shops, there's a belief there. There's a reason why you go to Starbucks, because most likely, you want to know what to expect. You probably aren't a risk taker. You want the consistency and you want the proven process. That's fine. But those are more of what we could assume someone going to Starbucks would want. But if you go to one of those boutique coffee places, it's like you want something new. You want to take some risks. You're open to adventure. Like that's something I could assume about both of those kinds of people, about their beliefs, that it's, we should take adventures in life, and even just down to that little decision. Anything else we want to add to brand? No. Okay. Now I want to flip it and ask you guys, as well as myself, have we thought about this for our own selves and how we represent ourselves, whether that is through, it's even down to who we connect with, the type of clients we connect with, everything, how we invoice our clients, what that looks like, or what our process was, which we talked about before. I would say even how you do something. So Lauren, you mentioned customer service, that was really great. And customer service also comes in when the process breaks down, customer service comes in. And so then you think, well, how you do something is also a part of your brand. So that proprietary process that you have. So like the pizza place that they know how to make their pizza just right, that they have a way of doing it, just like Starbucks, that it comes out the same every single time. So that's very similar to what we could do as well. So knowing all this, have you guys turned it on yourself and asked yourself these questions? I know some of you have, and I know, a lot of us have been starting that as well. And what's been your experience with looking at this list? Name, visual identity, feelings, packaging, customer service, environment, hitting on the 5 senses, your beliefs, possibly even storytelling. How have you incorporated that? And have you? Or are you working on it?
I actually did a strategy packet for myself. The same
you
one
did
that
it for yourself? That's
the same one that I give to my clients. I filled out for myself. So, and I'm pulling it up right now. The problem is I hadn't exported it as a PDF. It's just an InDesign. So computer's warming up. Otherwise I'd show it, but
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So that's something I was going to tell you guys too, is that if you have not done strategy either for yourself, which good job doing it for yourself, because that's really hard to see yourself. If you haven't done it for yourself, you could even potentially partner up with someone. Something I did last year, partnered up with a few friends, and we all did strategy for each other. So whatever you are, I think most of us are offering strategy. Is there anyone that's not in this group? Some form of strategy. I think we all do. Okay. So because we do offer that service, I think it's really, really good for us to also go through the process, whether that's you do it yourself like Zach, or you have someone do strategy for you. It really, really helps get the ball rolling. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least it gets another person's perspective. So I do encourage you guys that if you haven't had that done for you yet, or if you haven't done it for yourself, because it was too hard for me where I was at that time. I couldn't look at myself. I needed outside eyes, and I needed to tell my story to someone else for them to start picking out what's important, because sometimes we just don't know how to do that. You could also do a brand audit for each other before you do the strategy, is just look through all the things that the touch points of your brand, and the other person just makes notes on what do they see, knowing who your target audience is, knowing who you are. Does that align? Do they see anything that's a disconnect? So it's something that you guys could pair up and do potentially for each other. But I think that the things that I'm noticing when people brand themselves, or when I went to brand my own self, is that I started super generic and kind of fuzzy, knowing who I was. And then it got more specific and more specific as I kept evolving and rebranding. I wouldn't say rebranding, like refreshing my brand, that it just kept getting so much more focused until now. I personally would love to pivot in 2019 to just do strategy. And I don't even know if I want to do identity. I don't even know if I want to do design at all. But I definitely want to put more of an emphasis on strategy. But for me, it was like this, it's just getting more focused until it becomes crystal clear. And so my messaging is going to evolve and how I present myself. So where would you guys rate yourself as far as your clarity for what your brand and the clarity that you have to connect with your client? Where would you rate yourself? Super clear, not so clear? I feel like Zach's pretty clear on his direction.
I think it's pretty difficult because I did strategy for myself too at the beginning of this year, actually. And it was quite easy for me, I think. Mm-hmm. But it's just my perspective. So I don't know if it's actually right, because I know myself. So it would be interesting if I do a brand audit, if others will see it the same.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's difficult to brand yourself. Yeah.
Definitely. I think one of the hardest things is our differentiator and our unique selling proposition, because when you look at all of us, we are, I think I had mentioned this before, that we're technically competitors, really, if in the generic sense. We all are brand strategists. We all are designers. We technically could compete against each other. But the thing that makes us not compete against each other are those differentiators. It's our target markets. It's how we do things. It's even just who we are and how we talk as individuals. And I'm finding that designers and brand strategists don't or cannot see what differentiates them among everybody else. Is that a good assumption with you guys too? So with that said, do you have any of you discovered what is that differentiator? And maybe it's not just like one specific thing. Maybe it's how you do something. Like, do you know what that would be for you? Daniel, do you know? You're shaking your head yes.
Sorry, my girlfriend was just talking to me.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. But yeah, Mark, you're shaking your head no. Is that something that you're having a difficulty with?
Yeah, I definitely struggle with that. It's just like everybody's saying, it's just hard to do it for yourself. What do they say? You know, it's like being in a glass jar, not being able to read the label.
Yeah.
Exactly how I feel.
So this is something I'd love, and I maybe could do it with one of you if you guys are up for it. So there was an exercise that I don't know if any of you know of this that I've told you. So I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I was on a call with Christo and I was having a really hard time, and he had looked at my website and he's like, what the heck is this? Why are you saying those things? What is this messaging? Like, he was just ripping on it for sure. And I'm like, yeah, I'm solving people's problems. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? And he's like, it just sounds so bland, like how boring it is. So these are the questions that he asked me, and I'll tell them to you first, and I'll tell you how they've completely worked for not only me doing coaching, me doing brand strategy, but just in my own self too, how it helped me. But it might help you guys, and then I can do it with one of you, and so you guys can see how it works. But this is what happened. So he asked me and you can do this in a couple different ways, but where were you? So as in, like, you could do this in any sort of way. It could be, where did you grow up? And did you move? Like, where were you before and where are you now? So it could be anything like that. It could be that you grew up one place and you moved to another. It could be that when you were young, you did something, you were really into a specific sport or activity or hobby, something. There could have been something sentimental when you were younger. It could have been a story. So I try and go a little deeper than what Chris did for me, because all he did was, and this was enough, which was really cool. All he did was, where were you born? Where'd you grow up? I'm like, I was born here, like pretty much 10 miles away from where I was born. He goes, okay, where are you now? I'm like 10 miles away from where I was born. So he said, okay, so you've lived in Orange County your entire life. What does that say about you? And I'm like, well, the way you asked it does not sound good. He's like, just tell me all of the assumptions that someone could make about you knowing that. So where were you? Where are you now? What does that say about you? Dang window, like things in my eyes, the light. Anyway, so it's, where were you? Where are you now? What does that say about you? So I started just naming off things. I said, well, it says that I'm not a risk taker. It says that when I know something good, I keep with it. Like, I know when I have something good. I'm not going to move out of Orange County. It's perfect. Like, it is. Weather's perfect. Everything's perfect. Zach's laughing. You're in San Diego. Actually, San Diego's weather's.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, La Jolla is perfect if you're going for perfect weather. But Orange County is second best. So things like that. So even just with that alone, he said, okay, you can take the negative one, the one that I'm not a risk taker. And he said, you can flip it into something positive. And then he goes, brands are valuable. We won't take risks with yours. And that's something that's on my site now, but that was from Chris. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I can take my own story, my own everything, experience and everything, and write all this copy. And I was like, I got it. Don't talk to me anymore. I got to go. And that night I rewrote my entire website copy based on knowing who I was and knowing that those things are special about me, because it's how It's how I communicate. It's how I relate to people. And I think this is where designers struggle. They try to create something new and think, why have I not connected with someone? It's like, just reach in the past, reach in your history. You've already connected with a ton of people. You already know how to have a relationship, but just know who you are, know where you've been, and know why that's important. And that was the single thing that completely changed my branding. And then from there, when I met Bonnie and how she represents herself visually, I felt like, okay, I got it. Like, those were the two things I was missing. So I would love to, if someone's up for it, to do that with you guys. And I've done this with people, and we get really deep. Like, we got to the point where someone recently I had talked with, they used to build trains, like those model railroad train tracks, with their family, with their dad and their brother. And he was talking about it, and I'm like, that's really interesting. That's really, really interesting. He's like, oh, really? And so we kept talking, and we realized that he wants to build a small agency that's very family-like. And he also is really big into solving problems and getting all the pieces and connecting them. And so there's a lot of relationship from just that moment in time when he was a child, and how his brother and his dad and him all worked together, and how he was more of the entrepreneur, thinking of things and showing his dad the cutout on the wall where the train should go. Like, he planned everything, and then he was more of the entrepreneurial mind that set everybody into motion. And that's what he's doing now. So it was like foreshadowing what he's doing now. So now he can pull, even how he describes his services, he can pull verbiage from back then, like things that have to do with railroads, things that have to do with, even if there was a specific thing that they named one of the trains, like pulling something from that. They also did it in their basement. And then I thought, oh my gosh, like, how cool would it be if you had this think tank thing where you're just trying out new projects and you're experimenting, and you call it the basement. Things like that. Like, you can use all of your past and your story to inform what you're doing now. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can pull just from those questions. And I'm using it a lot more now, even at the beginning of brand strategy, when I'm trying to figure out someone's backstory. I'll do this. And I think I've done this a lot, even with the free consultations I was doing with the fashion designers. And I think there was only 2 out of maybe 25 that it was hard to get that aha moment for them. So, anyone want to try this? Can I do this with you? Want to be my guinea pig? Come on, someone's got to.
I'll volunteer. I volunteer as tribute.
You volunteer as tribute. Okay, you, and then I want Mark too, because I know Mark's struggling with this too. Okay, Zach.
Yes.
Think back to your childhood. Growing up, what are the main memories that come out of there, and where did you live?
Born and raised in San Diego, because it is actually perfect. Late nights at In-N-Out with friends, playing a bunch of video games, going to concerts at Soma San Diego, and stage diving with a bunch of friends, going to the beach and playing volleyball, and drawing all the time, and honing my skills and getting better at things that I really like doing, like playing guitar, or when I wrestled in high school, focusing on the things that I really enjoyed doing.
Awesome. And was there anyone that you were close to? Like,
absolutely.
Who was a mentor who influenced you?
Definitely my best friend, who I've known since I was 13, and I'm actually going to go hang out with after this. Awesome. And my mentor from SDSU, who was a big branding guy back in the 80s and 90s, who ran a company called CKS Partners, which was one of the first billion-dollar integrated marketing agencies.
Awesome. And if you think back, do you have anything sentimental that you're really attached to, or that has a story attached to it that you're doesn't have to be if you can't think of anything.
I have my first dog's collar.
Oh.
Yeah, Moose.
That's cute. So you're a big animal person.
I am more a friend person because that dog was so special to me, and because he was the same age I was. My parents got him when he was a puppy, and right after I was born. So he and I kind of grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I have great dogs now, but he was the first one, and he was a very good, just a freaking good dog. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I love dogs, and good ones at that.
Mm-hmm.
So now, knowing your past, where are you now in comparison? So you're still in SD.
Uh-huh.
You still go to the beach?
As my pale skin might tell otherwise, but I try to.
What other things? Where are you?
Still love going to concerts and listening to music and being with my friends. Still, friendship is my most valued asset, and most valued time spent is with people that I care about.
How's that compared to family?
I would consider them the same thing, because my best friend is more than just a friend. He's like a brother to me. He's someone who I've known for almost my whole life, and I consider the two of them synonymous.
Got it. Okay. What else are you doing now, as compared to maybe where you were, or something different, anything new or that has evolved?
Yeah. Well, when I met my mentor, I started focusing less on things that were less on being passive and more on being very direct and focused, which was something that I needed to do to grow up as a designer, because I was very whimsical and didn't have a sense of direction. And now that's a major focus of mine, and it's part of my personality type, where inefficiency for me is like the plague. I can't stand it when things don't follow a logical progression, and if there isn't a direct purpose associated with it, I will ask the question, why are you wasting my time with this? There's no direct goal. There's no steps to get to it. So let's think about that first, and then we'll work backwards. So a focus on being efficient has been the biggest growing point.
And then just to go back really quick to your past, what's maybe one or two of your best memories?
Man, that's tough.
Or if your parents were to tell a story about you, like, oh my gosh, do you remember when Zach was a kid and he would always what?
Well, actually, my parents ran into my third grade teacher of mine very recently. Mm-hmm. And the thing that she remembered most about me was that I was super analytical, and that it was more because she also taught my younger brother and my sister, and all three of us had very different things that she remembered about each one. My sister's very assertive and spunky. My brother is very generous and meek and kind, and I was very tactical and analytical and looked at things from a bird's eye perspective and try to understand what was happening.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And do you have is there any story from even just it doesn't have to be your best memory. Is there a memory that pops up for you of a story that anything? It's funny, sad, happy.
My aunt and uncle tell the story all the time of when I was five or six, and I was over at their house, and I wore glasses when I was younger, and something was happening where they were coming up with a movie for some kind of something that was like off Animal Planet or something that I thought was really interesting. And I was running, chasing one of my cousins, and I saw the commercial and I stopped and I looked and I pulled my glasses up like this and I was like, they're making a movie out of that? Like, that's just like super, like really nerdy. My aunt and uncle thought like we just watched a Poindexter moment right there.
That's awesome. So would you say that you're nerdy?
Yes.
You have a nerdy
absolutely.
side. Okay.
Yeah. I love comic books. I would read my Marvel Encyclopedia more than any other book. And I've gone to every single Captain America premiere on the day that it's released, as with Star Wars.
That is a very good thing to know. Awesome. Okay. So now with that said, so we know where you were, and I'm going to pull out a couple key things that we're going to focus on so that we're not just looking at your entire past. I would like to point out the fact that you were born and raised in San Diego and you stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
So we can start with that one, but you're still there. What does that say about you?
I like being where my family and friends are.
Okay. This is awesome.
Yeah. Because if they weren't here, I might have gone. All right.
Right.
I'm not might have, I would have.
Right.
But because it's something I've contemplated before, but then I think I have both sides of my grandparents still here. I have my mom and dad here, my cousins here, my best friends here. Why would I want to leave that?
Yep.
Those are the things that matter the most to me.
Yes. Okay, next. You had your first dog. You keep his collar. Is it him?
Yeah.
Okay. You have his collar still. What does that say about you?
Nostalgia? Or
sure.
That I keep smaller things that serve their purpose. Because the reason I kept that one was because it actually had a lot of value, whereas I was going through a bunch of other stuff and was throwing it out. So like this isn't doing it for me. This doesn't serve a purpose, but that does, because that's something that's extremely personal and extremely valuable to me.
Okay. Next thing, the nerdy part. I feel like that's kind of a given. Like we can assume that you're nerdy based on this.
Thank you.
So, but what other things can we assume about you because of those stories that you told us? So that you are into comic books, that you go to all the premieres. Is there anything else that we can assume about you?
So in high school, I'm someone, I've never drank or never done anything like that in my life. And it was because when everybody else was in high school, it was kind of assumed that that was what you were going to do. And I remember thinking very distinctly that I wanted to be a different example for my cousins who are younger than me and for my brother and sister, that you can go through high school and have fun still, which is why I went to things like movie premieres for things that I liked, or I played video games with friends and we would play ping pong, or we would go get in and out at 2 a.m, because those were the things that we did that were still fun, that were different from what everybody else was doing on a Friday night, which is a little bit more scandalous.
Okay. This is great. Okay. We're going to stop there and I'm going to show you how these things can play into your brand. So first off, you like being where your family and friends are. To me, hearing this, I would assume that you would also like to be where your clients are. Therefore, focusing on, and maybe you already are, but focusing on the demographic that is literally within your area. So putting all of your eggs in that basket, making sure that you are up to date on your Google Maps or whatever they have, but really focusing on your location. So that's what I would assume, knowing this about you. So knowing that you want to be where your family and friends are, why then would you want to work with someone that is so far away from you?
Good point.
So that's something that I would assume. So the next thing, nostalgia. Keep small things that serve their purpose, personal and valuable. So to me, if you if you are nostalgic like that, you are most likely going to attract people like that if you put that. You can, and I don't know how, and I think this is where the creativity comes in. How can you incorporate that in nostalgia within your brand? Maybe it's just the questions you ask your clients. Maybe you ask them, is there anything that you have that is really personal to you? Because then it goes back to what Bonnie had mentioned about the gifts. You know, I think she had mentioned like getting craft beer for your clients. But if you find out that personal thing that they value, maybe it's attached to a memory, and then it's very personal. Then when you give it to them, it's like, oh my gosh, that would blow people away. So that's something that could be incorporated in your brand. The part about being a nerd, that those specific stories you said about how you go to all the first premieres, even something like that, it could be like you have, let's just say you had a calendar of events for some reason, or just some upcoming things because you're serving your local community, and you insert in those really random things that are happening, or that you can insert, like if you go to Comic-Con, that you can bring that type of personality into your brand. So you could be posting like, hey, I'm going to Comic-Con, or you can figure out how to integrate that into your brand, but I wouldn't hide it, because then you're going to get, what's going to be awesome is you're going to get people who are going to Comic-Con, and let's just say they're in the trade skills profession. So they're a plumber or something, like, oh dude, this guy's going to Comic-Con too, and they're super into it. And you want to work with, I'm sure you want to work with those types of people.
Exactly.
So how you can integrate that. So even if it's like, oh, all this normal stuff, and then you have one, like, or maybe it's your office hours, be like, here's my office hours, but just by the way, if there's a premiere of this or this, you can count me out or something. Like you can integrate that into the normal things. Cause that's another thing you said about you being in high school and wanting to not just go along with what everyone's doing. So most likely this goes with your clients as well. They don't want to advertise like everyone else, like all of the other professionals out there. And so you have something that's normal, going back to the office hours, but it's like, okay, normal office hours, whatever. But then inserting something that's like, what? That's different. Or playing off of that somehow.
Right.
Kind of like the movie reference, or
yeah, or like with Pinkberry, how they're like swirling daily.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. So then you're going to want to take, maybe that is certain quotes from the movies that you really like, because then the person who reads it, if they're into the movies too, they're like, oh, I know what he just did there. Or if you insert a word that they normally use, let's say in Star Wars, that is very specific, like some, you know, like even the light years ahead, like things like that you could use in your messaging, because that's a part of you. And then that will connect with whoever's reading it. So that's how I would integrate you into, and you could do this exercise yourself too. Like now that you know how it goes, you can go back and be like, oh, there's so many other things you can integrate into the brand. Does that help?
It does. Yeah. Well, and it's cool because it's affirming. Like if you go on my website, on my about page, I actually don't have descriptions really. Mm-hmm. I have pictures, and there's so many things of like, there's the movie V for Vendetta. Mm-hmm. There's him amidst a crowd of stormtroopers on there. Awesome. And yeah, because it signifies the rebellion and the difference and standing out from the crowd, but it's a nerdy thing. Mm-hmm. You know, exactly. So it's cool. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So integrate that as much as you can. It's like exactly what you said about Pinkberry, when I think Yo Santosa said you put everything through the brand filter. Mm-hmm. So like the office hours, like when they're open, but anything that you can put through that brand filter, obviously not to overdo it where it's super cheeseball and you're like, okay, I get it, but you know. And so you can even use that for your social media posting. You can use that anything. Even when you send an invoice, you can change the template, you know, what it says. So there's so many ways of integrating that into your own brand. So thanks for being the first one.
You're welcome.
Mark, do you want to, first I want to hear, Mark, what do you think now looking at how this goes. Do you see how this might be helpful? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I see how you can kind of sprinkle your personality within the context of your business. Mm-hmm. I think that's the major thing I took away from that.
Yeah.
You kind of inject your personality. You always hear people saying, yeah, you should inject your personality into your messaging and your website and things like that. And I never knew how to come at it.
Yeah. Are you up for it? Do you mind if we?
Sure.
Okay. So where were you? Where were you born? Tell me something significant about your growing up.
I was born in a town in Connecticut. And if you haven't looked at a map of Connecticut lately, it's a little tiny state on the East Coast. Yeah, born and raised here. I now live probably 20, 25 miles away from where I grew up. My parents both worked when I was a kid. We used to go to the beach. That's where our vacations were. So we didn't really travel a lot. And I think that's what kind of spurred me to want to travel and explore the world, because I love traveling. And any chance I get, I will go somewhere. What else? Oh, so when I was a kid, I had my grandmother and my mother's mother, very close with her, and she had a disease called lupus. So she was home with us a lot because of her issues, being paralyzed from the waist down. I was super, super close with her, and she's kind of the fuel for my artistic or creativity, because we used to just draw all the time, color and stuff when I was young. And I think that just fueled the fire, and I've always done art throughout my life, even in school. Where am I now? Well, now I've got 2 kids now. Mm-hmm. They're both teenagers. So, and being, like Zach was saying, is being close to family is important, and being close to friends and having that support system. One thing I was thinking of when Zach was talking about friends is, like, I never had a huge group of friends. It was always a handful of very close friends. Mm-hmm. And looking back on it, I think today I still have just that handful of really close people that are part of my life. Yeah. What else do you need to know?
Give me do you have anything that's sentimental that you have? And if not, are you a sentimental person?
Sentimental. Yeah, I've got all sorts of little tchotchkes, things from high school. So I've got this little box in my closet, and I pull it out every once in a while. It's got all these little tchotchkes in there. And one of the tchotchkes is I think I was a freshman in high school. And at the time, it was really cool to grow a little string of hair in the back and braid it.
Yes.
I'm probably dating myself. But anyway, so I've got like that there, this big long braid. So it's fun to see the kids go in there and, what's this? What's this? And tell them all these little stories,
Yeah.
So I do have those little mementos, different things.
Oh, yeah. Any other stories that come to mind when you're thinking back, like a specific something that's happened in your past that stuck with you?
Well, my mom always tells the story of when my sister was probably 1.5 years old. So I was probably about 5.5. We had this large coffee table in front of the couch, and it was like 1.5 inches stone. It was like a piece of slate or something. And she was trying to crawl up on the couch, and she fell back and cracked her head open.
Oh, no.
So, of course, my dad was working second shift. We only had one car. So she called the neighbor to bring us to the hospital. And she's like, go get dressed. Not thinking anything but get your clothes on, we gotta go. So I did. And we go to the hospital. And after, she got her stitches, my mom had calmed down. She came out and she started laughing at me sitting in this chair. Well, my PJs were on, and I had just got a pair of cleats. So I threw my cleats on and a jacket and a hat.
Aww.
So, typical kid. Something new, you want to keep using it. So
yeah, you did what you were told.
Absolutely.
You got ready. Oh, that's funny. That's awesome. Anyone else who is significant to you? Your grandma, what was she like? So you said she fueled your creativity. Is there anything special about her? And why did she fuel that? What did she do?
I just remember, ever since I remember her, just always drawing and just helping me draw. I mean, I think my mom might even have some sketchbooks from when I was like 3 years old of drawing, steam shovels and bulldozers and things like that. That were all done at her house, and I can remember some of them when you look at it. So I don't know. She was just a very warm, caring person. I think it had to do with me being the first grandchild too.
Yeah. And then and what were you into when you were younger?
I was not into team sports. I played racquetball, so it's like individual.
Okay.
What else? Unlike Zach, I got into a little trouble in high school. I was pushing the boundaries a little bit. Like I had this core group of friends we used to hang around with, and sometimes we'd walk into school and just not want to be there, and we'd turn around and walk out. And I think one of my friends was 2 days shy of staying back because we skipped so many days. So we found loopholes in the system.
Yeah.
What else?
And were you into any specific shows or like music? Anything?
I love most music.
Okay.
I did go to a lot of shows when I was a teenager. Still go to shows when I can. I saw a lot of hair bands. Again, I'm hating myself.
And where are you now? As in, like, you said you have 2 kids. You live about 25 miles away from where you grew up, teenagers. What's your life like now?
Well, compared to my past, it's pretty boring. Just in the routine, got the work, got the kids. So always, like I say on my website, I'm a part-time Uber driver for the kids, shuttling them here and there.
Do you foster their creativity?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, my youngest daughter is talking about maybe going to school for interior design.
Oh, that's amazing.
So we're just starting down the path of like, hey, you should probably take more art classes and maybe some drafting and, start building those skills up.
Yeah. Okay. Now we'll go into the third question. I'm going to ask you specifics. So you're born in Connecticut and you only live about 25 miles away from where you grew up. What does that say about you?
Kind of like you were, you don't take risks, right? But I do like to travel. So I guess there's still that adventurous side in me. I guess I like to have a base, right? A base of support, a base to go and explore from.
That's great. And then next is that you're, I'm just looking through my notes. You never had a huge group of friends. So you had a very tight group of friends. Would you say are you still like that?
Pretty much.
For the most part. So what does that say? What would that say about you?
Probably 2 things come to mind. Loyalty. It's probably the first thing. The second thing is I think it takes time for me to trust people.
Okay, that's great. Next, the box in the closet. What does that's awesome. What does that say about you?
I'm a hoarder? No.
No.
I don't know. I think it's just those little mementos of they're kind of the breadcrumbs of my life, I would think, I guess they're tokens of stories or chapters in my life.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And then the last one is not playing team sports. So you weren't into, I think there's two different types of people in the world, those who play team sports and those who absolutely do not. And I fall into that as well. I do not play team sports. I never did, ever. So I don't know if you're like that, if you're just not into them at all, but what does that say about you? You were never into the team sport movement and all that.
I think it has to do with control.
Okay.
I can be kind of a control freak to some degree, not like obsessively,
right?
But I like to have my hands on the reins. And here's something I just thought of. So I'm going to be turning 50 beginning of next year. And when my kids were young, they showed an interest in starting Taekwondo. So they started. And I'm sitting on the chair watching them going, why am I sitting here? I should be out there with them, right? Kind of so that dad can do this too. So I joined. And both kids have since left, but I still continue to do that. It's a passion of mine. Oh, but again, it's kind of an individual thing, right? That you can control and constantly learning and working to improve.
Okay. So I just want to go over, kind of similar to what we did with Zach, what I would do with these things that I now know about you, and something maybe to help spur ideas for you. So the first thing was you don't take risks, but you like to travel. So you like to have a base to explore from. That definitely can be incorporated into your brand in many different ways. That could be that one way it could manifest is that you have your processes down, but then there's something that you experiment with. There's something that you allow yourself to experiment with. That could be with the client process as well. You could have your whole, like, this is what we do, but this is where we experiment. So there's a way that your process could, reflect that. There's also, I'm thinking, because you were going towards the medical field too.
Yeah, right? That's the industry I'm targeting.
So they're very much like, I would think, buttoned up, but you'd want the people who, yes, they're buttoned up, but they're still because in medicine, you have to be innovators as well. And so I would think that there's some way to incorporate that. Yes, we need to be very buttoned up. So I would be buttoned up with your process. I would be buttoned up with how you communicate things, but then somehow incorporate that intrigue of the unknown. So of maybe the innovations that are coming up, maybe it's spotlighting certain innovations that have come up. So it's that mix of, yes, we have to do everything towards the book, but also we want to look ahead to the future in how we innovate. So there could be something there. So I think there's ways that you can be thinking about that and how you translate that into your brand, but that's definitely one. Having everything buttoned up, but then there's something that, you like to travel. So that's experimenting, it's innovation, it's
perspective.
Something. Yeah, perspective. So that could be in things that you share. I mean, that's articles that you could share online. That could be, if you have a newsletter, it could be something that you keep in contact with your clients, and just say, hey, this is something new that caught my attention, thought it might be interesting to you too. So that could be something. The next one is the loyalty, and it takes time to trust people. I would think that if you're like that, your friends are also like that, which makes me think your clients are also like that. So that's something where if that takes time, then know that it's going to take time to get to know your clients. So treat your clients don't treat them, exactly like friends, but treat it as such. So you would want to get a small group of clients that you service, that you want to be loyal to, that I'm assuming from what I know about you that you're not going to want to recycle or not go through clients turnover too much, that you'd want to stick with a few big clients, which in the medical field, that happens. They lock in with someone and they do stay with them for a very long time. So that is good that you picked that industry as well. But the building that loyalty, so knowing that those are the types of clients you're looking for. And so it's about the building of the relationships and sticking with them over time. The mementos are breadcrumbs of life, tokens of stories and chapters from your life. So I'm wondering what you could do with that. That could be going deeper into your client's business and getting stories from them. I don't know. Maybe something to do with, instead of staying super high level as far as the work that you do for them, maybe getting deeper and actually telling a story. And especially if it's medical, if there's medical, then you can dig into how does this brand actually change lives? How does their business get one story that they've done for someone because of their technology, because of whatever it is that they do, that it's helped people. And then use that. So I think that would be really an interesting take on that if you do get approval that you could use stories. Because medical can be so sterile, but really when we think of what is it supposed to be doing, it's supposed to be helping us, especially what's interesting, it's connected back to your grandma who had lupus. So you had someone in your life who had a severe disability and illness, and now you're in the medical industry. So I'm sure there's some kind of like subconscious tie to it because you had to go through that too. So there's something there. The wants control and you want to have your hands on the reins. That to me says that you're probably going to stay smaller, because having too many people work for you, that I don't know if that doesn't sound like it would be you, that you would be more of the consultant role. You would have your hand on all of the projects, which is probably fine, because if you only have a small group of clients, that's not a big deal. So that's kind of what I hear when I hear you say that. The other thing is fostering creativity. Potentially in the future, I don't know if you like teaching, but there is that as well that you could incorporate, of fostering other people's creativity. Anyone else have anything you want to add that you noticed from that conversation? Or Mark, if you have any thoughts as well. Does that help?
I think it's just so important to have someone helping you with this, because if you think about it yourself, you'll miss out these little questions to dig really deep. So it's important to get someone to help you with this, I think.
Agreed. So if you guys want to do it, there's a couple things we could do. You could either pair up with each other and do it, or if you are up for it, I don't mind doing this for our next call as well, if you guys are interested in doing that, so that you can hear other people's. Does it help you hear other people's? Know how we did it? Okay. So I don't mind if you guys want, we can do this next week as well, and it helps me too, because as a facilitator, and I'm sure you guys are like this too, you want to know what are the right questions to ask and how does one zero in on what's important. Because we get so much information, it's like, how do we then narrow down what we should actually go for? So when I'm taking notes, I start highlighting things that are of interest to me, or that I can then relate to a larger idea. Like what Mark had said about, both Mark and Zach, you guys both had those kinds of things. But Mark, when you said you had a close group of friends and that you liked playing the one-man sport, that to me, it's like, oh my gosh, that's foreshadowing exactly what you probably want to be doing in your work. To me, having a small group of clients and being the ringleader, and being the one in charge, which is totally fine. But those are the things that I start noticing. And And then things like if you were really into a certain show, if there's something that you always did as a kid, that is really important, because you then want to ask yourself, why? Why did you do that? Like me, I only watched I Love Lucy, literally from probably the time I was born until college. I almost always watched just that show. And then I had to ask myself, why did I like it so much? And there's reasons behind it. And I'm sure it's, I could think about this even more, but things like that. Like, what would your parents say about you that you always did? Like, did you always wear the red rain boots every single day? Things like that. They tell something about our personality. So, and it's worked really well, again, with clients that I've been working with. It's worked really well when I do coaching. So, and it worked really well with me when Chris had asked me that. So, we'll do this next time, and maybe I might have a sign up sheet just so that we can plan out to see. I could probably fit 4 people in the next call. So that's what we'll plan on. And I'll have a sign up sheet for that, but thanks for participating, guys. I appreciate that.
Melinda, can you post those questions that you ask in the group? Those are very effective.
Yeah, I will.
Cool.
Definitely. Any other questions or comments from you guys before we go? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm excited too, once we do this, to see how you guys interpret your own, once you have that aha moment too, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much I can now take from my past. It's going to give you that momentum to keep going forward. So you can ask yourself, I know Bonnie has asked this in her group, but what were your grandparents like? And the second that I started describing my grandparents, and then Bonnie said, oh, I can see both of them in you, because one is really buttoned up and charming and very concerned with looks, but just in general, like very creative, builds, was very industrious. And then my grandma was the funniest person I've ever met in my entire life. Would say ridiculous things, but super witty, super smart. And I think, I hope I got a lot from both of them. But that's another exercise that you can do that Bonnie's done. So about your grandparents, about your parents. I love asking too about anything sentimental or a memory that really sticks out to you, because that says something about you, because then you can ask yourself, why did that stick out to me? What does that say about me? So anyway, thank you guys for participating. And I'll see if we're going to meet next week. It's Thanksgiving here in the States. So I'll let you know. If not, we may skip next week, and then we'll meet up the following week. So I'll keep you guys updated, but thanks for joining. Bye guys.